Welcome, everyone. As you are getting settled in, we're just going to let you know that we have quite a few people signing on from all over the globe. I definitely look forward to a really good turnout. So we're going to wait about 3 to 5 minutes so everyone has a chance to see the beginning and join us. Feel free to use the chat and introduce yourself and where you're tuning in from. Hello, Jack. Thanks for joining us from Toronto on behalf of Showing Guide. This webinar is being recorded, and if any of you would like a copy of the recording, all you need to do is go to proventures.org/proptechlead and request the recording, and we'll have it sent to you as soon as it's ready. Okay, I see quite a few people are just jumping on the meetup RSVP, so we'll give it a few more minutes. Oh, look who it is. If it isn't Dr. Colby, here to say hello. Once he connects to audio, I'll let you know. We should be able to hear you now.
Hello. Hey,
Hi.
Saul. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Stephen.
Hey, Jen.
Hi, Dr. Colby.
I see. Yes. Usually we don't record until we actually start. That way we can, but it's good.
Okay, fair enough. I'm wearing many hats this round.
I like that background. That almost looks like a SpongeBob kind of background.
It's sort of like that, like Bikini Bottom. And actually I have to change it because I can't have that when on a recorded video, because there we go. How's that? It's better. Yeah, apparently I don't have a deal with Viacom.
Yeah.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Dr. Colby?
I'm Stephen Colby. I am a patent attorney. I have been helping Jen with her Zoom stuff, but she's the leader and all this kind of stuff. I've known her for 8 or 9 years, 8 years, since she was a little kid. Yeah. So
And what do you do professionally?
I am a patent attorney. I work with early stage startups. I do all kinds of stuff. I've done quite a few property tech companies over the years. Let's see what else.
Where are you located?
I am based in North Lake Tahoe, which is a tough place to be right now. Ski season is winding down, and you know, what are you going to do? So we're going to have to get the kayak out soon. Although I'm going to go next week to Washington. So
For the NAR meetings?
I'm going to I'm going to a USA Select conference first.
Uh-huh. I used to love, there was a while I was doing real estate technology seminars in the real estate industry, and I had many routes across the country. And one was I would somehow get to Carson City, Nevada, and then do Reno, and then up over and do North Lake Tahoe, and then do the south side of Tahoe, and then head down to Sacramento or someplace, right? And by the end of the week, I'd done 10 programs, and I probably did that route 3 times a year.
Yeah, I'm on the loop from Reno to Truckee.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a pretty good drive.
Yeah.
Nice place.
I had a friend, an employee one time that actually lived in the, Lake Tahoe. There's like an island and a castle in the middle of the, on the island. There was like a house or a cat, and that's where she was raised.
Are you sure you're not talking about Alcatraz?
Yeah, no, that was another one. No,
I had a client who raised in the middle of an island in San Francisco Bay. It's like, wait, yeah. I had a associate who did a selfie of her with the San Francisco Bay behind her, and she says, "This is where I want to be, my destiny." And my response was, "Alcatraz?"
Yeah.
Wait, from
The best.
Pacific Heights down to Alcatraz. Yeah.
Oh, the best is whenever I would meet anyone from other states or anywhere in the world in Silicon Valley, and they would just take a look around and they would feel the energy and they would say, "I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay here." And I'm like, okay, well, let's see what we can do.
I was very lucky. In the summer of 1972, I was in the Navy, and I had just been commissioned, and I was stationed on Treasure Island. And if you're familiar with San Francisco, Treasure Island's like right in the middle of the bay, halfway between Oakland and San Francisco. And it was a great place for a young man to be stationed for 2 months at the end of the summer of 1972.
Oh, that's pretty good, because you were still getting the tail end of the Haight-Ashbury era.
Yeah, no, it was. Yep, it was still in the middle of the Vietnam War, the Vietnam era. There was no ceasefire.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that there would be a naval base and probably some of the primest, choicest real estate.
It is now condos, only tainted by the fact that it's also a hazmat.
Yeah.
zone because it was a naval base.
naval base. Well, we all went to, I went to damage control school there. And so,
Mm.
we were like putting out fires, and part of that course of instruction was nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare. And so I can imagine, right?
Yes.
And it was a school for many years. Yeah, that was a great time of life.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day and evening for some of you. I know it's morning for the let me see, how do I say that? And I don't know how to say it. You got to remind me. Daniel. Oh, okay. Proponomist. That's it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for being here. All right. Well, I'm going to give a quick overview of ProVentures. It is a learning network to support entrepreneurs across various industries, Proptech being one of them. And we are passionate about helping you succeed in your business and doing everything we can to provide mentorship, advising, and e-learning, and having webinars like this featuring seasoned professionals that have a track record of great success and sharing knowledge with others in the same space so that we can help each other grow and collaborate and network. And I'm Jennifer, the current president of ProVentures. And today we will be in conversation with Saul Klein. And I know that Saul can do a much better introduction for himself than I could. So I'm just going to allow Saul to let us know who he is and what his background is and why Proptech matters.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, Jennifer and Stephen. Great to meet you. And we used to call this your Davy Crockett, born on a mountaintop in Tennessee kind of thing. And so I'll briefly as possible, kind of go over my background. I was a naval officer, and I was lucky enough to spend 6 years in the United States Navy. And when I got out of the Navy, I was a young man and was looking for something to do. And real estate, it was 1978 when I got out. Real estate was something that looked like it was, I would do well in it. And I liked the concept of real estate. And my grandfather had been a real estate broker as well as a firefighter. And my father always bought real estate. My mom and dad, whenever we got transferred, and they always seemed to make money on the property. So it made sense to me. And I went to look for a job in San Diego, and it was difficult to find something that would pay me what I believed I was worth. And so I decided I would try my luck at real estate. I got a real estate sales license, and took about 2 years. I decided I was going to get a real estate broker's license, and I built a real estate business, and I built a property management business. And in the 1980s, some of you might remember that the big securities businesses and the insurance businesses were looking to get into the real estate space. And so Prudential got into real estate. Merrill Lynch, which was a stock brokerage company, a bank, really got into real estate. And Metropolitan Life Insurance Company bought Century 21, and Sears bought Payne Weber. And to me, it looked like the real estate business, the real estate industry was going to change. And they were looking at sharing database, and that was what was taking place. So I thought, well, to compete, I need to do other things. So I got licensed in securities. I got a Series 7, Series 24, Series 63 securities licenses. I got an insurance license. I became a certified financial planner, and I built a financial planning and real estate business. And by late 1980s, I tell people my business in real estate had matured. My tax business had matured. That means I didn't have to do a lot of prospecting. I had a customer base that pretty much took care of things. And I got active in Association of Realtors politics, and I became the president of the San Diego Association of Realtors in 1993. And that was the time that the National Association funded something called a Realtors Information Network. And the concept of the RIN, the Realtors Information Network, was to bring technology to the real estate industry. 1995, I was hired to be the evangelist for technology by RIN, by the National Association of Realtors. And that meant looking at technology and then figuring out how that technology could be applied to the real estate business. And during that period of time, a small team of us created something called Realtor.com. And we convinced MLSs across the country that it would be a good idea to display their listings on Realtor.com. And there's a long story behind that, but Realtor.com got spun off in about 1996. And I, with two partners, went out and started teaching technology to and we're talking basic technology, email. How does email work? What's a website? How does that work? How are you going to use email in your real estate business? How are you going to use it in a transaction? What pain points? What problems can be solved by this? What to us today is very basic technology, but people weren't utilizing it. And in 2001, I got a contract. My partners and I got a contract from the National Association of Realtors to create the online technology certification program of the National Association of Realtors, something they called ePro. And over a 9-year period, we enrolled about 70,000 students in ePro. And I go back, I also taught real estate classes when I was a real estate broker, an active real estate broker. So I taught all of the classes you can possibly think of, all the licensing classes, pre-continuing education. There wasn't any when I started. And then the continuing education courses, created a technology platform and enrolled 70,000 people. And it was, it was early online learning stuff. We had to look at synchronous versus asynchronous learning. How can we get people involved? How can we get them excited about learning technology online? And in 2008, I took a job as the chief executive officer of a company in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I know somebody was from Toronto. And in Saskatoon, we created the capability to go into a multiple listing service and download all of the listing information. And that included the pictures. And that was no easy feat. The first time we did it, and we did it with the MLS in Detroit, it took like 3 days to download all those images. And it just was amazing. And so we had to bring in developers that could help us so we could do that, to get to something that, real time, and we never got there, but we got pretty close to where we were refreshing that data on a regular basis. And my customers, when I was CEO of this company, it was called Point 2 Technologies, were some startup companies that you might have heard of, Zillow and Trulia, and they got their data from two companies, from ListHub and from my company, Point 2. And in 2011, we sold both companies. We had the company where we had the contract with the National Association of Realtors to deliver online technology programs to realtors. And we also sold the company in Saskatchewan, Point 2, to a company called Yardi. Yardi is a major software developer, property management company. And I had the great pleasure and honor to work with Anant Yardi for 4 years. And it was just a great experience. And that takes us to 2014. And my partner, John Riley, and I left Yardi in 2014 and kind of set out on our own back to where we started. And that was consulting, talking to startup companies, trying to help people in any way we could as they got and took their products, figured out what they wanted to do, and help them figure out if in fact they could take their projects to market. So, and here I am today.
And we're so lucky to have you. And thank you so much, Saul, for contributing your time and your knowledge. And we are all looking forward to hearing your responses to some of these challenging questions that I came up with for you. And to kick it off, I would like to first ask, how can entrepreneurs know if their PropTech idea will succeed in the real estate industry?
Well, that's a great question. And so how do you measure success? And I used to tell people you can have the best idea, best concept in the world, but that doesn't mean that you're going to make money from it. And so success is defined in a number of different ways, but basically is, are you solving a problem? You know, is there some pain point in the transaction process? A lot of the companies that I worked with over the years, they would develop technology for their own use. And then after they figured out that it was valuable and beneficial, they thought, well, maybe can we take this to market? Will other companies pay us for the technology that we developed for ourselves? And so how do you know? If you can solve a problem and you can do it in a cost-effective manner, then there's a likelihood or a chance that you will be successful. Does that mean you'll make a lot of money? Maybe. When I worked for Anant Yardi, he would always ask me when I would bring him an idea, and he would say, Saul, how big is that market? He says, I have limited resources. I think he had 6,000 employees worldwide at the time. And I said, I have limited resources. How big is that market? And how big is the market? How many people are there that could buy your product? And what percentage do you think you could capture? And then how much is that? And then from that, we'll decide if we can dedicate our resources to the development of that product. And so there were often I had great ideas, and they were great ideas, but for him, they didn't create enough. There wasn't enough potential to dedicate the resources to further develop whatever the idea was that I took to him.
Right.
It needs directions. Yeah.
And so the importance of just having, the distribution has been one concept that we've been discussing quite a bit with those we've chatted through ProVentures. And there's definitely, if you have a large brokerage and a good size one, a few hundred, a few thousand agents, then you immediately have some type of test users for your idea, or you can bring in others' innovations and actually see how they may engage with the new technology. And the question we would like to know is, how can we gain a proper understanding of how far we can grow just from our test space, if we should have one, and gain traction in this industry? What kind of deployment methods would we have to go through in order to get it to grow to other than just our own brokerage?
Well, so the first thing is that I would think of is that there have been many brokers that developed technologies to take to their agents that never got adopted by their own agents. Even though it didn't cost their agents anything, the streets are scattered with technology solutions developed by brokerage firms that never got adopted by the audiences that they supposedly controlled to a degree. So it's not good enough to think that because you're a broker and you've got 1,000, 10,000 agents, that those agents are going to adopt your technology, or that they're going to move from what they're currently doing and change their practice. There has to be something significant to move them from one use to another, from one solution to another. But I go back to, how big is the market? So let's say we've developed something that we can utilize at our brokerage firm. The next question is, how many realtors are there? And of course, we know that realtor is a trademark, and that only people that can call themselves realtors are people who are members of the National Association of Realtors and in their state and local association of realtors. But there are probably twice as many licensees in the country. So there are realtors, and there are what I used to refer to as real estate professionals, or people that have a real estate license that might apply it in some way. So how many people are there? What's the universe of people that could utilize whatever technology solution you're creating? So you want to know, how big can your project be? Well, in the real estate marketplace, that's one way. The next thing is, are there other ancillary, or are there other marketplaces where you can solve the same pain point? Does what you're doing for the real estate professional, would that work for the insurance professional? Would that work for the financial planning professional? Would that, right? And so how can you take it from one vertical to another? And that might give you some idea of how much you could grow. But the first thing is, particularly if you're developing the software for your own use, is beyond my initial agent population. Where would I take it? How big is that? And we know in the United States, when it comes to people that have real estate licenses, particularly if we're talking about members of the National Association of Realtors, about 1.4 million people maximum, of which a small percentage sell more than 10 pieces of property a year. And it's not even that many. Right? There are only about 5 million transactions a year. That's 10 million sides. And there are 1.4, give or take, million people who are members of the National Association of Realtors. So on average, it's like if everybody produced the same number, about 10 transactions per person. And it's not bad at all, right? We know that some people produce a lot more and some people produce a lot less.
Right. And given the role that you had on more of our political side of the industry, how would you describe the role that our RPAC may have in the PropTech industry?
Well, I saw that question, and it's interesting to me. First of all, I believe firmly in RPAC, right? In what the realtor organization does to fight for private property rights. And so if I said, well, what could RPAC do for PropTech? I think maybe trying to help in the area. One of the things that when I look at social media, and I look at the fact if you develop a following on Facebook or anywhere, you can't take it with you when you go. There's no interoperability. And what I would love to see is interoperability. And so that the platforms where social media platforms would have to produce, because if they didn't, you could leave. And when you left, you could take your following with you. And so that would make them much more responsive. And so as we look at changes to the laws around social media, I think RPAC could have an impact there. So that's how RPAC, I think, could help out. But RPAC does a lot of things and fights for private property rights, and nobody else really does. Now, the National Association of Realtors has another program, has a technology program known as REACH. And I don't know if you're familiar with REACH. And so new companies, startups can go through an interview process. NAR, the National Association of Realtors, are members. They know where these pain points are. There are major brokerage firms where the brokers and senior staff have volunteered to work in this REACH program to be mentors for startups. And if you're willing to give up a piece of your company and you jump through all the hoops and you are accepted into the REACH program, there's a way that a startup can actually get some good mentoring, learn about the industry. So a lot of the companies that think they want to get into the real estate space don't really understand the space they're jumping into. And oftentimes technologists, they know a lot about the technology, but they don't know a lot about the real estate industry or about the realtor and the personalities of the people that are willing to work in a 100% commission environment. And so they got this great product. They know it's a great product, but how do you take it to market? How do you perfect it? How do you iterate, right? And so it'd be great if you had people that actually own brokerage firms or understand this, own companies, and are willing to participate with you. And that's the NAR REACH program. So for people who are interested in that, I'd search that out because there's some great benefits there. I've seen many startups try to be successful in real estate without a deep enough understanding, right, to be able to really be successful in taking their products to market.
Okay, wonderful, and thank you for mentioning REACH. And I've definitely had a lot of great interactions and connections that I've gained through REACH, and still in conversation and have been learning quite a lot. So for those of you who are realtors and have a chance to attend our legislative days in DC coming up, then you may have an opportunity to get in touch as well. And there's other ways that are possible. Now going into more of the emerging technologies such as AI, and that has of course been quite popular since OpenAI and some other competing platforms, how would you describe or imagine AI to be affecting or revolutionizing the real estate industry as a whole?
Well, great question. So there are different sides to AI. There's the good side and the bad side. And then there's a natural resistance for people to resist change. And so right now, when we talk to, at least when I talk to certain groups of realtors, I notice that some are all in favor of this concept of figuring out. See, we don't know yet. We have to, just like we didn't know how we were going to use email in real estate, believe it or not. We didn't know how we were going to use email in real estate transactions. And as basic as it sounds, I had to actually sit down and figure out, what if I created in Outlook, right? What if I created in an email, a client-side email application? What if I created folders for every transaction or folders for every client? That was really innovative. And what happens if I could create rules and filters to take the email that's relevant to a certain transaction and put it automatically in a folder? What could the email help me create an electronic paper trail that might reduce my risk and that the Arizona Mission insurance companies might look at in a positive way? But we didn't know that initially. We had to kind of think through it. We had to think through what are the phases and steps in a real estate transaction. When you think about it, what do you do in a real estate transaction? You help people find property, or you help them market their property, you educate them, you negotiate for them, you transact, you close, right? There's these steps in a real estate transaction. So I think it's important to take a look at that and then look at all the things that you do. And I often tell people, develop a menu of services. Take a look at your last 10 transactions and then go through it and take these phases of a real estate transaction, from educate, negotiate, close, and go through it and write down everything that you did in those transactions, and to kind of get a feel for what are all those steps, and then look at which of those steps you could utilize technology to be more efficient and more cost effective. And so that goes for AI as well. So when we started playing around with AI, what I did, people were saying, no, it'll never, and I hear this all, oh, no, you'll never replace the realtor. You'll never replace the human being in a real estate transaction. And I was always an advocate of that. And I always believed that. And that was part of my message when I took technology to the real estate industry in the 90s. But I think the role of the real estate agent is going to change. So I think it's very important for people to kind of look at what is going to be what is the role and what are the skill sets that are going to be required of somebody who sells real estate 5 years from now, and what technology tools then might help them. And it's best to think of it now rather than later. And so with AI, when I started playing around with it, I thought, what I'm going to do? I'm going to figure out how it can help me with marketing, and how can it help me write marketing descriptions. And so I went and found a property. I went to realtor.com. I found a property that was for sale, in an area that I was very, very intimate with and know inside and out. And then asked, I think I probably used ChatGPT at the time. I asked it to develop a 500-word marketing piece around this address, this property. And then when it developed it, I could look to see how accurate it was. Was it really very accurate in defining? And I had to go in and clean it up a little bit. And I was just doing this as an experiment. And I found out that 500 words was way too many. So I went back in and I asked it to reduce it to 250 words. And I asked it to reduce it to 100. So if I were actively selling real estate today, and I'm not, I haven't for many, many years, haven't sold real estate for other people. But if I were doing that today, I would look at artificial intelligence solutions, and I would look at the things I'm doing, and I would figure out how it could help me do some of the things that I'm already doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the first step. And how much will the AI actually take over all of these things that I've outlined that I do in a real estate transaction? Educate, locate, negotiate, close, those phases of a transaction, then list those things. There are some things that we might be able to pass off to technology, and there's some things that still it takes a human being to do. But is a human being always going to be required? For all of my friends that are in real estate, I'll say, well, yes. And at the same time, it might not be doing the same things that you're doing today, or it'll be less of one thing and more of another thing. And you have to keep your eyes open and pay attention to the technology, and don't poo-poo the technology with the excuse that you'll always need a human being in a real estate transaction. That might be
Exactly.
wishful thinking.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you perceive the emerging technologies to be integral in helping agents succeed at what they're already doing and have no thought that they could replace realtors anytime soon. Is that correct?
Yeah, not replace, but change the job description.
Change the job description. Okay, so
It'll allow them to do other things. And I
right.
think the role of the realtor will be a more consultative. We've been saying this for years, but I think we're getting close to that period of time, more consultative type of business,
Mhm.
where you need to make, as a realtor, you know things about an area. How can you use technology to help you know more about an area that a consumer doesn't know? And then how can you help them make decisions based on the transparency and the information that you have about a particular area where you specialize?
Exactly. And not only can it help us with those marketing descriptions, but with the data side as well, which, not every realtor out there is expected to be a data scientist. So coming in, having success, being able to express that to their clients, and then now having AI to analyze vast amounts of data sets and help those consumers make more informed decisions. So what now is the next step? We have all this data, and what do we do with it? How can real estate agents around the world use the AI to better express the data or use it to build their business faster?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we have to, it's an educational process where people have to really understand how can data be utilized, how can it be used to make better decisions, how can the things that we kind of take for granted, we look at real estate zip code by zip code, but the fact is there are natural markets beyond zip codes, and how can we utilize data? And there's a lot of data that's free and there's a lot of data that's not free, but how can that all be brought together by some prop tech company that can create the ability to analyze that data and create valuable insights that help in the decision-making process? And I know companies that do this. One of the companies that I work for, Places, does this, or work with, does this kind of thing at a level much higher than I'd ever seen before. We know that some of the big companies that will come, like Zillow, they'll come out and they'll give an index, right? What's going to happen to the affordability? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down in this area? What if I was buying a portfolio of loans, would I buy it in this city or this city? Which area is more likely to have foreclosures based on the type of loan and who? So there's lots of different potential problems that need to be solved that AI will solve for people. And so if I'm selling real estate, I want to stay up with, say here, and a good example of one of my favorite products that the National Association of Realtors has been dealing with for years, and it started back in '95 with something we called geodata, and it evolved into something now that they call RPR, Realtor Property Resource. Just a wonderful, wonderful tool. $100 million spent to develop this great tool, but in my mind, underutilized. People don't, and if you went in and play, so what you have to do is go in and play with this software and look at what's been developed, and then again go back to look and see how can you utilize this tool to help differentiate you from the competition. I used to say to people, real estate's a Me Too business. It's like, what do you do to sell real estate? Well, I put a lockbox on the property, I put a sign up, I run ads, I put it on realtor.com or everybody does the same thing, and everybody kind of charges pretty much in the same neighborhood. So you got to figure out ways to differentiate yourself. And so some of these areas of utilizing data to give more insight to consumers is a differentiator. Just knowing about it is a differentiator. Just being able to have a conversation with people about it is a differentiator. So I would say to people who are actively selling real estate today that aren't using RPR, just looking at it and learning about what it offers is worth your while. And I think if it's tied to your MLS, I think it's paid for in you don't have to pay any extra for it. It's like part of what your MLS offers through the National Association of Realtors. And don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure that used to be the model anyway. But I would look into that. And so right now, people need to, I believe, learn more about how data can help people make decisions. How can a buyer make a more informed decision? How can a seller make a more informed decision? How can, take this further? How can insurance companies make more informed decisions? How can buyers of loan portfolios make more informed decisions by utilizing the data? And what's going to make that data more powerful is the AI that keeps refining the different metrics that will mean something to, like if I'm going to buy a house in a neighbor, I want to know, is this neighborhood going to, I might want to know, is this neighborhood going to appreciate in value, or is this neighborhood going to appreciate? What's the 5-year picture for properties in this neighborhood? And the technologies enhanced by artificial intelligence might help people see into the future, and that's valuable.
Absolutely. And everyone wants to know, how can we predict when someone is going to need to buy or sell their next home or their future investment? And that seems to center around a lot of our questions that we receive. And in your experience, just how could you use some of the market trend data that's already available and line it up with AI and maybe some type of machine learning model to help gain a better understanding and just help realtors drive business faster and make it a little bit more predictable?
Yeah, so I don't think it's the realtor. I think it's whoever develops the technology that then can take it to the realtor. But it reminds me of a story, and I don't remember if it was Walmart or Target, where there are life events and things that take place that foretell the future. And I don't remember if it was Walmart and Stephen, you might remember this, or Target, where they were able to figure out that like women in the second trimester of the pregnancy bought certain things.
I think it was Target.
Just by these purchases, and so they were able to do market diapers ahead of time because they were able to figure this out by looking at buying trends. So one of the things I think is really valuable is consumer behavioral data. And so there's a lot that can be told from the collection and the mashing and that I can't do, but that with the computing power available today and machine learning and AI, what they call AI, that can actually figure these kinds of things out. When is someone going to sell their house? Maybe they're going to sell their house when they have another kid. Are there indicators, is there data that's available, either paid or otherwise, that someone developed a program to analyze based on all this information when someone's going to have a kid, which might indicate that if they're in a 2-bedroom house and they've got 2 kids and they're going to have another kid, might they be a candidate for listing their home for sale? And maybe, right? So utilizing that kind of data, and the realtor's not going to do this, not on their own. They're going to look to somebody that's developed a technology that can give them that kind of insight, so that instead of having to prospect 100 properties to get a listing, they can prospect 10, right? So we're back to, how can the technology help me be more efficient? Can it help me narrow that universe of people that I might market to get a listing or work with a buyer, whatever side of the transaction I'm interested in?
So I have to ask you, if you were to introduce a new Proptech innovation right now, how would you go about doing it? What would be your strategy, or how would you, just in a very general way?
Well, for me, the biggest issue was always having enough money to develop the product. And I used to tell my friends that, at least for me, and I was a securities broker for a number of years, as well as a real estate broker, the hardest part was raising the capital to do it. And I think that raising the capital today is more difficult than it was a couple of years ago. And what the capital market, what people are interested, investors are interested in, is typically a minimum viable product and a customer or a revenue stream. And I got a greater chance of being able to raise the capital to be able to bring my product or idea to life if I've got those things. I got a minimum product that I can demonstrate to people, and I've actually got people using it. And if I've got that, that's going to make the path to capital easier. And that's essential. It's really hard to build something on sweat equity and take it to market and be a huge success with it.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a problem we are working to resolve with some of our affiliate partners, is just how we can, get faster feedback when we bring these ideas forward. And with a lot of them are definitely targeting the broker management side. And also we see a lot in property management. And so from that perspective, there's a lot of risk that needs to be managed. And in your view, is a machine able to help us manage that risk a little bit better than we could otherwise do ourselves?
Well, so there's different types of risks, right?
Mhm.
And so definitely the more transparency I have into an asset, the probably I've mitigated some of the risk, that's for sure. In the area of property management software, property management software is real interesting. Again, I worked for a company for 4 years, Yardi, a major software development company, and they found ways to utilize the software that they developed in ways that I'd never thought of before. So they were able to spin off their existing code base or technologies into new areas. When I was with Anna and with Yardi, he was talking about at the time utilizing his property management software to manage hospital beds. And I never really thought of hospital beds as real estate, but they really are. And right, you've got things that come in and things that go out, and all of that can be measured, and that can help the doctors. And can you use and apply the property management software code and ideas around a bed? And I don't know how far they got with that, but when I left the company, that's what they were looking at doing at the time, and it made a lot of sense. And what they were doing then is taking what they had developed and finding new uses in new markets.
Mhm.
And that's why one of my, the question I mentioned, Anna would always ask me is, how big's the market? And I could look at the real estate market and see how much money can we make there, but then could we take it to other markets? Could we take that application to the insurance market? We take that application to medicine? Could we take that application to the financial marketplaces? And then that's a bigger universe. And that expands the opportunity and the revenue opportunities around that development, around that software.
That's an excellent point, and that goes for other applications too, and such as VR even. We had a lot of enthusiasm when it first became known, and there was a lot of great entrepreneurs who poured a lot of their finances and their energy into attempting to bring it to the surface. And there was a lot of learning that happened from that. And as far as you can tell, what do you think about technologies like AR and VR and how they can either help or not so much in the real estate space? Is that even a good use case for a technology as robust as VR?
Well, so real estate's still pretty basic sales if you think about it, right? I mean, there's just some basic things, and so you don't need the technology, although people's habits have changed. Just think about it. Before we built Realtor.com and put listings on the internet, there was a different value proposition that a realtor brought to the consumer. And that value proposition was basically, I know what's for sale and you don't. And that changed when we displayed listings on the internet at Realtor.com, and then we went crazy because we created real estate syndication. And I might have mentioned this to you. The idea was, if I'm going to put my listings on the internet, I want to put my listings in a place where people see it. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to put it there, particularly if I have to pay for it. Well, Microsoft got around that; they made it free. But so if we're going to put our listing on the internet, there are many places that we can put it. And if we put it in just one place, and my theory back when we developed Realtor.com was put it in one place, don't give it away to everybody. Put that information in one place. Everybody will, like the Super Bowl, we'll put it on one station. Everybody will learn that's where you go, and you'll create an amazing asset around this data collected by all the realtors in the country. But Microsoft entered the marketplace and they offered it for free. And the original Realtor.com model was $1 a listing a month. And so the board of directors didn't want to compete with Microsoft and the big tech companies in the 90s. So they spun that off and it went public. And then as these new entities got into the market, the next generation, the Zillows and the Troyas, they needed listing data. And so there were many places, because everybody thought they had this idea that they could just display listings on the internet and create a business around displaying listings on the internet. And so if you're a realtor, where do you put it? Well, you can think you're smart enough to figure out where the best place is to put it. And that's very difficult. Or you can put it everywhere. And if you put it everywhere, you got a good chance of putting it in the place where most people are going to see it. And that was the concept. And so we created this phrase, distribution trumps destination. Distribution trumps destination. That they put it everywhere. And then we had to create the technology to allow us to take that data from the multiple listing services, normalize that data so that we could then feed that data to Troya and to Zillow and to the other entities. Well, maybe that's not the best approach any longer. Maybe we know enough to know that some places are better than others and that putting it everywhere doesn't make the sense that it might have made 15 years ago. And so maybe we changed that approach. Donna, what was your, lost track of the question.
You did a great job. That was fantastic. You had me captured. So the positioning of our information and how it gets brought to the masses so that we can come in contact with one single buyer, and the challenge of that and how to best present the property, tying back to VR and whether that is a proper use case. And you know, there's definitely been a lot of attempts to bring VR into the real estate space, and so far I haven't heard of any that have succeeded.
You know, and some of that might be generational. Right. So that's a whole nother aspect of this thing, right? Where different generations are going to be more accepting and more demanding even of the utilization of certain technologies because they're used to it. Now, I'm not a gamer, but I think that people that are real comfortable in that environment might be more comfortable with virtual reality, right? And might want that when they're looking. For me, if I'm going to buy a house, I'd probably still, and I'm not, I've been, my wife and I've been in this house. She bought this house that where I'm in 1967. But if I were to want to buy a house, I would probably want to go look at it. But that's generational, I think, or at least to a large degree, that's generational. And so I think if you don't see it now, you'll see it in the future.
Right.
So if you're a realtor, as a practicing realtor, figure out, start looking at this stuff and figuring out before other people do, because that's your differentiator.
Okay. I'm going to see if I can ask some questions on behalf of our attendees. Bill Williams, he is a great realtor in San Francisco, and he's wondering, Saul, have you evaluated the Compass platform and have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I have a lot of friends in San Francisco. My friend Walt Pekowski runs the Association of Realtors in the MLS in San Francisco. And I haven't spent any time on that platform.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, I think that if it's in your marketplace and other people are using it, that you should carve some time out of your day or talk to people about it, just to learn about it, to figure out if it, because some software and some solutions might work in one market, not in another market. And so I'd take a look at it, who's using it in your marketplace, and talk to them about it.
Okay. And one more question from Bill is, what do you think of the current state of technology among today's residential brokers or brokerages?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of technology available to brokers today. And by brokers, I imagine you mean people who managing brokers, people who are owner brokers, people who own companies that have agents working for them. And I think that there's a huge opportunity to adopt different technologies to make you, the people who work for you, more efficient and more effective. And there's always new technologies coming out. I don't think I mentioned, another program that I love that NAR is involved in is IOI, right? Where they look at new technologies, and there's probably 3 or 4 of these IOI seminars, NAR seminars across the country. And the newest, the latest types of technologies and applications that are being developed. And so the state of it is there's plenty of it. And so which technologies, and to go back to this, what are the tasks that you're performing, and which technologies help you be more efficient at those tasks? It's not going to revolutionize what you're doing completely at this stage. It's a step-by-step process, integrating these different types of technologies as they're developed into the things that you're already doing.
Mhm. Okay, we have an anonymous question. With your perspective in the mid-90s, when the internet was just getting started, how does that compare to today's technology climate?
Well, in the 90s, we had to convince people that the internet wasn't a fad. Now, that's a joke today, but that was the truth then. I remember when I was doing seminars explaining the internet and the World Wide Web, and the 2 sides to the internet, the email side and the website side, that there were 20 million users. That was right. I still have that slide. 20 million users. That was like, this is it. This is coming. There's 20 million users. And we had to convince people that this was actually a tool they could use. I don't think you have to convince people anymore that this is a tool that people need to use. What you need to show them is ways in which they can use it, either as a consumer or as a professional. So the way that it's changed is we've gone from having to convince people to use it to showing them how to use it.
Okay.
So believe it or not, I mean, that to me, it's amazing when I think about it, that we had to convince, so that we named our company Internet Crusade. That's what we named it, Internet Crusade. And I had this brainstorm one time that was like, these people don't believe me. And if I'm going to be an evangelist, I have to be willing to get in front of people, tell them something they don't believe, and be willing to tell them again and again and again, beat my head against the wall because I know it's true. They don't. I need to kind of be a crusader about this and not be offended that people don't believe me when I'm telling them this is where it's all going. This is the future. And so today you don't have to do that. Although maybe you do in AI. Maybe you need to be, if you really believe in AI, you have to be a crusader. You have to be willing to show people, and this was always a big deal, you have to show people practical application. Because they don't really believe you when you're just talking generality. But if I can show you practical application, and then I can show you result from the practical application, then I got a better chance of selling you my technology.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to Bill Williams because he is asking something that I have been wondering too since right when I first got into real estate over a decade ago and thought about all the fragmentation. And Bill's bringing this up now about one platform versus many different platforms and just having all these different access points. And do you have any comments about the pros and cons of centralizing data? Or
so when you talk, are you talking about listing data?
I believe so, yeah.
Putting the listing data in one spot?
Yes.
So that back when we introduced bringing all the listings to the internet, there are 3 ways to motivate people, right? Fear, greed, and love. And so we introduced into our programs fear, greed, and love. And one of the fears, and Bill Gates helped us do this, in his book, The Road Ahead, one of the fears was that and this actually is how we got this idea around for Realtor.com, was fractionalized. We found out at the time that actually it was about 1994 that there were like 15 websites we could find, or I don't remember the number, 100 websites, and each one had like a small number of listings. But if you had a lot of websites with a small number of listings, the consumers will never adopt it. You need to kind of get what we called a critical mass. And if you could get a critical mass, then you could start to get the eyeballs to come look at it. And so the fragmentation was our enemy. Today, I don't think it's fragmented the way it's all over, but it's all over in bulk. It's critical mass all over. And so that critical mass exists in a lot of places. And I don't think that's in the best interest of the real estate community today. And so listing information has kind of been commoditized. You can find listing information everywhere and anywhere. And in some cases, it's legitimate, that it's licensed to be utilized. In some cases, it's what we call gray data. It's not licensed, right? You get it, people get it for one purpose, but then they use it for other purposes. People get it for one purpose and they create derivative works around it. And the realtors, the people who created that, who actually went out and gathered that data, don't benefit downstream from the products that are created. And they really should. And so I don't know that it needs to be on one platform. I'm an advocate of MLS. I really believe in MLS. You know, I'm in favor of data sharing arrangements. Data licensing is, I think I created with my company probably the first real data licensing agreements in the real estate industry, because people were giving away their data initially. When I was at Point Two and we were getting contracts with multiple listing services, we were getting those contracts from the MLSs with no restrictions. Can you believe that? No restrictions. We were getting this data, no restrictions, and we could use it for anything we wanted. And I was working with Walt Bukowski, who runs the San Francisco Association of Realtors today, in our condo up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, because that's where we're located. And we said, you know, this isn't right. People don't even know that when they give us this data, we're giving that data away, and people that receive that data can create $100 million, billion-dollar companies around the data, and the originator of that is not being, doesn't benefit. So we came up with this idea of data licensing, restricting derivative works, how you could utilize it. And so today, if you look at multiple listing services, they actually offer that data. And there's like 3 different major forms, and people don't understand this, right? There's one, you can get the data for one advertising use, and they refer to that as IDX, Internet Data Exchange. You can get the data for another use, which is to create like a virtual office website or a VAL. If you're not a practicing realtor, you have to be a realtor and a member of the MLS to get an IDX license agreement or a VOW license agreement. If you're not licensed and a member of the MLS, you can still get the data from an MLS under a syndication license agreement. Now that data might come in one feed, right? It might be one feed that says, what's your license? If you've got the IDX license, you can only use it this way. If you got the VOW license, you can only use it this way. If you got the syndication license, you can only use it this way, or you can use it this particular way. You can create derivative works, you can't create derivative works. But it's important to understand that there are different license agreements for the use of that data. And then there's data standards, and that people should be familiar with that. And there's data payloads. So when I get that feed, is it people say, well, it's a RETS feed, real estate transaction standard, right? What does that really mean? Well, because what I'm really interested in is, can I get the data, and then am I licensed to utilize that data to create whatever it is I want to create with it, display it, create leads with it, create derivative works. What if I get a feed from a multiple listing service, and I get a feed from a brokerage, and the agent loads the feed, and so now I'm a website company, I'm a portal, and I'm getting data from different sources. What happens if I have duplicate data? Which source is what I always call the authoritative source? You know, so like if I'm an MLS, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give you my data, but if you get the data from other sources, I want mine to be authoritative. And so I'll let you have my data. My license agreement would say, if you get it from other sources, you display my data, you don't display the other source data. Well, that might sit well with some people, but the brokerage firm might say, we want to be the authoritative source. Mm-hmm. And so if we're going to give our data to a portal to display, we want to make sure it actually gets displayed. So a lot to think about when you're thinking about data. And so to go back to the question, one platform, I don't know that you need one platform. Should there be rules around how it's aggregate? Can you do data? Are there other ways to accomplish that without it being on one platform? I think possibly. I don't think I would want one platform to rule them all, right?
Great answer. Thank you, Saul. I want to ask the next question, if you don't mind. It looks like another anonymous would like to know what are some of the top opportunities in today's real estate market that you see?
Top opportunities for the use of technology in real estate transactions.
Yes.
Well, you know, I'm like an advocate of blockchain,
Mhm.
and I think people should be looking at blockchain solutions to things they're already doing. I think there's application for blockchain technologies in closing software and even in display software, if you think about it. And so maybe if I can create information and content around a property, maybe I should own the rights to that. Is there any way we can create something that would allow me to own the rights to the content that I might create around a property that could be sold downstream to somebody, that might even be sold to another realtor that takes a listing on that property a couple of years from now, where I've done some work on it and I've somehow got the title to that information. And I think blockchain presents an opportunity for the real estate industry today. I have a friend that has a company that's tokenized. That's another aspect of tokenization of, right, using blockchain. Again, I worked with a company, not really work with them, but had advised to a degree a company that went in, bought an asset, bought a house, broke it into like 10,000 pieces and blockchain, and then sold the pieces like $50 minimums or something, right? And so now if you can actually buy the property and then sell it for the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks. Now, instead of buying a cup of coffee at Starbucks, I can buy a little piece of real estate because blockchain technology makes that possible. Is it a security? Is it not a security? There's these things called DAO, distributive autonomous organizations, that allow for voting and management, which give people some control, which might get around the security question. So I think, again, blockchain type of technology offers opportunities to people. How would you utilize that in things that people are already doing? And then how might you take it to the next level?
Mhm. Great answer. The Anonymist is asking a fantastic question about the general perception in the US towards technology by the historical stakeholders, if you will, of the built environment, such as real estate agents, valuers, lawyers, property managers, property developers, and construction companies. For instance, in Asia, where he's dialing in from, there is still a lot of resistance, and the majority is still looking at PropTech as an enemy, taking away their jobs. Curious about the US.
I think there's that kind of resistance. I was talking to a contractor not too long ago that was telling me about technology that the carpenters or whatever the trade is could wear, that it tells you where they are at what point in time, right? What they're actually doing. And then could you cut down on the amount of labor that it takes to build things if you tracked all of the steps of the people that build? And so some people might think that would, one thing, people don't like to be tracked, and another thing that might actually take away the jobs. But I have a new perspective on that. I finished a book not too long ago called "The End of the World is Just the Beginning." The End of the World is Just the Beginning by Peter Zeihan. And most of the world doesn't have enough people to replace the people that we have right now. And so we're going to have a shortage of people. And in some cases, the countries are beyond being able to turn that around. We better hope that we have technologies that can take over some of the jobs that need to be done. But so we go back to the question, is there a fear? I think there is, right? And it depends on where he is. Probably less here in the United States. And again, I think that might be generational to a degree as well. But there is that. I remember I would get resistance when I would take a technology product to a brokerage firm, and I would get resistance from the technology people in the company because they thought we were going to replace them. right? So the people you think would understand it and say, yeah, that works and we can integrate it, they would be the people to poo-poo it right out because they were afraid that it might take away from what they're doing. So we always got that kind of resistance.
Okay. And if anyone has any final questions, please submit them now because we are about to ask our final planned question for Saul this evening. And it looks like, let's see, in what ways do you see or foresee sustainable building practices affecting the future of real estate development?
Well, that's a big issue, right? Because sustainability is a major issue. And right along with sustainability goes environmental concerns and issues. And so I think that's something that needs to be considered as we move into the future. I think that kind of a little bit, take that question a little bit further. And I believe that land use policy in the United States is changing. And it's changing dramatically. And we have policy and funding behind driving the change. And so one of the things, higher densities, we've got major housing affordability issue. And so maybe by reusing materials and sustainability, that'll bring housing affordability, make housing affordability a reality. But we have this issue, and the largest component of housing is land costs. And so if you can the way to bring down land cost is to increase the number of units you can build on the property. And people have kind of been against that, and it changes the style of the neighborhood. But the fact is, again, I think land use policy in the United States has changed before. Before there were interstate highway system, there was land use policy. Once there was interstate highway systems put in place and people could get from one place to another, new land use policy. The concept that you can was drive till you qualify. Let's just keep building out further, building out further, building out further. But the fact is we can't service that any longer. It's too expensive and too many people are driving. And so the air is polluted. And so there are all these reasons to want to, and affordability. So can we put more units on a piece of property? Can we make it closer to public transportation? Walkability is a key piece. Do people really want to live more confined and in walkable neighborhoods? I think they do. I think part of this is generational, but I know many people today who are flocking to neighborhoods where they live closer to their work, closer to to their hobbies and to the things that they use to pass their time, and to the restaurants. And there are people that don't want to drive. And so if they can live closer and we can put more units, so here's some opportunity for people in real estate is to look at the areas where the government is going to allow you to build more units per property, per lot, and density bonuses, we probably could call them. And so if we can get density bonuses by building with sustainable resources or close to mass transit, that's going to give the property owners more opportunity. That's going to give realtors more opportunity that pay attention to this and watch what's happening. And so sustainability will play into the future, as will environmental and the concept of walkability. Chris Lineberger, one of my business partners, just released a study called Foot Traffic Ahead, and along with Smart Growth America. And it's real interesting to look at some of these, not the downtown, but downtown adjacent areas where there is increased density, where there is walkability, where they're actually showing that properties in these kinds of areas rent for a premium or sell for a premium. Now we're back to using the data, right? And analyzing the data and being able to determine that, geez, if I'm going to buy a property, maybe I buy in this area because I can rent it for more, or I can sell it for more. And, but back to the question about sustainability, is it in the future? I think it absolutely is.
Wow.
A friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine wrote a book. Let's see if I have a copy of it. It's called the New Grand Strategy. And it's all about restoring America's prosperity, security, and sustainability in the 21st century. And so a big piece of the future is sustainability, I think. And so does Puck and his business partner.
Thank you so much, Saul. We're just about out of time, and I just wanted to say that you are incredible, and thank you for continuing to support our industry and all that you do. And we definitely look forward to hearing from you again soon from ProVentures. And how can we get in touch with you? I know there's some questions that I may not have gotten to, and I apologize for that. But if someone would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Well, you can reach me by email, saul@bettercallsaul.realtor, not .com, .realtor. So I utilize one of the National Association of Realtors .realtor domain. So you can send me email at saul@bettercallsaul.realtor. And I've got a Facebook group called Real Talk. You can find me there, and I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and all those types of places. But saul@bettercallsaul.realtor, and I'll answer the email.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps this discussion on PropTech 101 and how it's revolutionizing the real estate industry. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We are just about to close out. And if you would like to request the recording, or if you'd like to have a free newsletter and stay in touch for more PropTech discussions, you can go to proventures.org. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thanks, Jennifer.